Hi there, welcome to This Must Be Talking Heads. My name is Rodney, the world's best and only Talking Heads historiologist, and we have a very special day today. We're going to be reviewing in full the Record Store Day Black Friday release from Talking Heads called Tentative Decisions, including the very rare original artistic demos for Psycho Killer and Warning Sign. Where do we even start with this release? I mean, I did mention this on one of the preview videos that I did, but you know, brat. To read the cover, because I did make a meal of it the first time, it says, Tentative Decisions, Demos and Live is the title of an LP and 7-inch by the band Talking Heads. Featuring early demo recordings and live performances, this compilation traces the band's progression from raw punk minimalism to a more structured, angular musical approach that reflects broader shifts in the post-punk aesthetics of the late 1970s. As I sometimes like to do, I thought I would start with the primary sources, which is to say Chris France's autobiography and David's semi-autobiography. So I'm going to have a look in those books and see what I can find about their recollections about recording demos and what that was like. So here's a bit of what Chris says in Remain in Love. This is from a chapter called The Record Companies. There were a few daring record company guys who started showing up at our gigs. Most of the record company people did not want to come down to the Bowery to see a new band. It was way out of their comfort zone. Mark Spector from Columbia Records was one of the few who did come down to CBGB. After seeing us play several shows, he took us to the famous Columbia studios to record a live demo. The room was cavernous and could accommodate a full symphony orchestra. It was considered to be the best-sounding studio in New York. Frank Sinatra, Barbra Streisand, Leonard Cohen, Laura Nyro, Bob Dylan, Paul Simon, and Paul McCartney had all made demos there. We drove up in Tina's little car with our gear and carried it up to the studio. As we were setting up and the engineer was getting his sounds, Mark explained that he wanted us to run through all the original songs that we knew as if this were a live show. We were recording live to a 2-track tape, so there would be no fixing or overdubs. We ran through the set list in less than an hour and then listened to the playback. There was nothing smooth or easily digestible about our sound. Still, Mark was pleased with the result, and as an A&R, artist and repertory man, would play it for his bosses, letting them know that it was our first time ever in a recording studio. He then goes on to talk about how he recorded a 3-song demo with Matthew Kaufman from Berserkly Records, who put out the Modern Lovers album, but given that those songs are not part of this release, I won't bother going into that. Then later he says, we sent the Columbia demo to Bob Faden, one of Clive Davis's Artista Records guys who had signed Patti Smith and Lou Reed, but when I called him about it after a few weeks, he said he'd lost it. And then he says a few weeks later in November 1975, they were opening for the Ramones and Seymour Stein heard them, and the rest is history. And then from How Music Works by David Byrne. So he starts by talking about a whole bunch of tape experimentations that he was doing. And then he says, years later with Talking Heads, we recorded demos for some of our songs. These weren't meant for public consumption, but to demonstrate the songs to others. Some recordings were made at the home studio of a friend who had an affordable piece of gear, the Tascam Prosumer 4-track recorder. Other Talking Heads demos were recorded at big professional studios, but not via multi-track. We recorded mostly live to stereo. One was recorded at a studio on Long Island where bubblegum hits had been made. That's the aforementioned 3-song tape that Chris was talking about. 2 others were paid for by record companies, partly so that they could hear us over and over without having to visit grotty clubs. These recordings sounded tinny and tiny and gave no sense of what the band sounded like live. There's an art to capturing the sound of a band, and it seemed at the time that neither we nor the guys who made these recordings possessed that particular skill. One could see why musicians and recording engineers would be inclined to get magical and mythical about studios where epochal recordings were made. I will talk a little bit about the tinny thinness of the sound, but I don't think it's actually that bad. So back to the recording proper. I'd say we've got probably 3 main areas that are being pulled together for this release. So there's obviously the artistics demos from the recently recovered tapes. I'll come to those in a sec. Then the main LP has demos from 2 eras, 1975 and 1976. Now, if you're like me, you may have in your record collection something like this, Talking Heads 1975 demos. So obviously that is a bootleg release of some of the recordings that are now have been cleaned up and restored and released officially on this album. I can tell you that if you have this 1975 release, you can put it in your archive box and leave it there because you're not going to want it anymore. You're going to want this big new release. We do have some information on the record sleeve that I want to go through. So side A is 4 songs from the 1975 demos, Psycho Killer, Tentative Decisions, No Compassion, and Warning Sign. Then we switched to 1976 demos for I'm Not In Love. Then we switched to side B for 5 more demos. Thank You for Sending Me an Angel, The Book I Read, I Wish You Wouldn't Say That, Love Goes to Building on Fire, and Happy Day, all from the 1976 period of demos. Then we end with the live song. I'll talk about that when we come to do the full rundown for all of this. Obviously, one of the interesting things about this period and this recording is that Talking Heads were a 3-piece at the time. Chris, Tina, and David. And it says here, LP, Talking Heads, David Byrne, guitar and vocals, Chris France, drums and percussion, Tina Weymouth, bass. Then interestingly it says, the first 4 demos on side A recorded by J.R. Roast at 435A 9th Street in Park Slope, Brooklyn on September 1975. And then interestingly it says, Kenny Landrum plays keyboards on tracks 1 and 2, Psycho Killer and Tentative Decisions. I'll come to that in a minute as well. All the rest of the demos, so all the 1976 demos, were also recorded by J.R. Roast at 435A 9th Street in Park Slope, Brooklyn in 1976. And then it says the live song, which is Artists Only, was recorded by J.R. Roast at the Lower Manhattan Ocean Club in New York on August 17, 1976, so around that period as well. And then it says the 7-inch single, The Artistics. Come on, you stupid camera. It says that was recorded by The Artistics, David Byrne, guitar and vocals, Chris France on drums, and David Anderson on bass. Recorded by The Artistics at 161 Benefit Street, Providence, Rhode Island in March 1974. The last interesting piece of information on the LP record sleeve is that it says all tracks previously unreleased. So let's get into it. Let's start with The Artistics, okay? So if you saw my preview video about this tape that was found at RISD in their archives, it says that they found a tape by The Artistics. It was labelled with Psycho Killer Warnin sign and a song called Spin Spin. That's not to be released, at least not at the moment. Maybe never, who knows. On the back it says, first song begins at approximately 23 units. The songs are called Psycho Killer Warnin sign. Recorded at 7.5 IPS, that's inches per second, on a stereo machine. On a mono machine, this tape can only be heard backwards. If you remember that video, the typeface and everything on here is very similar to that note that was found with that tape. So the authenticity just oozes out of this release. But what the heck do the songs sound like? All right, I'll get to it. So obviously these are like demos. They're like bedroom demos. Like imagine setting up a microphone in the middle of your living room and playing around it, and that's what these sound like, which is okay given what a time capsule these songs are, but let's go through the songs. Psycho Killer. The Artistics version, it starts with David counting in 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a single guitar note plucked to the rhythm of the song as a way of introducing it. David's vocals are really throaty, really bird-like. He's singing in a really weak kind of head voice. He's trying to bring the song up to a really melodic level rather than the sort of straightforward, punchy vocal style that we're used to. I mean, he's obviously not a seasoned performer at that point. He might have very tight vocal cords just from general nerves, but it might be nerve-wracking to be recording something for the first time. He does slip in a few little ohs. There's already a few little green shoots coming up of, what he will be like as a performer. Lyrically, there's a couple of changes. This is the original version. So this is how it was originally. And this is obviously the version that's credited to Martina and David and Chris. It's gone through many changes, and you can kind of track the progress of the song through the lyrical changes. But this version says, listen to me, I passed the test. Listen now and I'll tell you the rest. Skirt was tight, don't like her style. And I'm pretty sure he says, eliminate her, I am worthwhile. Which is pretty harsh. It's very edgy. It's not as subtle or artistic, you might say, as the later versions. But anyway, the French bridge is there. The song is truly just almost all in place. There is this sort of noisy guitar breakdown section, almost Velvet Underground-like, dare I say. It lasts for a couple of bars and then they go back to the chorus. So it's not the sort of usual tangent of the song's done, we're going to have a big freak out and then we're going to end the song. It's sort of like a noisy guitar, scratchy section and then back to the chorus. And then we'll just finish the song. And after they finish the chorus, David goes back to that sort of singular guitar note, plucking on the rhythm, and then they kind of crash to the end. There's a few other demos that came out like in the early 90s from the Sand in the Vaseline era that end in this same kind of way with just a few notes, dung, 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 and everything just crashes and the song ends. And then before you know it, we're through this version of Psycho Killer, the earliest known recorded version that's been released. Then we're into Warnin sign. So there's this guitar chord opening, which is really similar to one of the live covers that they started doing around that 77 period. I can't remember the name of it, but the chord progression sounds a lot like a cover that they ended up doing. So I don't know if that was the inspiration for this song or not. There's lots of scratchy guitar effects, like David's either playing one string really fast or he's sliding his pick along the strings, one of those. There's a few different lyrics again from the final version. He says things like, warning sign of things to come, just got off the telephone, round and round and round, think fast, it's the truth. And then probably the most interesting change from this version to what the song eventually becomes is there's a sort of vocal and bass slide section where he says, fix it, and then there's a bass slide, stop it, and there's a bass slide. hit it, and there's a bass line. It's very, very cool. I liked it. I guess you sort of get hints of something like that in some other songs, but it's just interesting to see that the song Warning Sign was even more jittery and that dropped away with later versions. So that's the artistics covered. If that's what you were here for, I hope you stick around for the rest. Then we're into the 1975 demos. So Psycho Killer kicks off this collection. Again, this recording's from September 1975. He's still trying to hold on a little bit to that head voice singing, that really high singing during Psycho Killer, instead of just punching it out and letting it come from his gut. A few lyrical differences. Now he's still hanging on to the idea of the tight dress. He still says dress tight. Don't like that style. He's minimized it a little bit. Don't criticize what I think is worthwhile. So no longer he's worried about whether he's worthwhile. He's trying to come across as a bit more of a conceptualist or an intellectualist. Song sounds really good. Doesn't really have that driving power that later versions of this have, but again, that's fine. For the final section, there's an echo applied to David's vocals, and I wondered how they would have done that, because these were all just sort of smash them out and record the demos. Whether they set up a separate mic, there's like two mics, one with a bit of echo on it, just so we could switch to that. There's also some squiggly noises at the end, and I was thinking, well, this must be that Kenny Landrum keyboard part that they've been talking about on the record cover. Something I'd never heard before or picked up before, and don't know who Kenny Landrum is, but thanks, Kenny. It sounds great. Up next, Tentative Decision. Really flangey guitar pedal. I don't know my guitar pedals. I'm no expert, but it sounds flangey. I don't know if I've even got the right word, but it feels right to me. It sounds like there's a second guitar in the background of the chorus of this recording. It's not David's line, because he's sort of playing chords and then muting them and chucking along. And then it's not Tina on bass, so it must be someone else. It doesn't sound like a keyboard, even though the credits say that Kenny Landrum is playing keyboards on this. It sounds more like a guitar to me, but anyway. A few slight lyrical changes. He says here, we've got a system and we think it's a new one. We're going to give you some problems. That gets tightened up a little bit. The chorus is really light, and the multi-layered vocals on the final album version really confirm what a good choice that was, because I was sort of missing them when I was listening to this version, but it still sounds great. No Compassion. The song is mostly there. This song has such a great composition. It's so well composed. I really love it. The coda section from this song in particular, I've always liked the last section, and it's right there on this version. And it just reminds me that as a band and as a musical unit, they were really developing into something just so great. And this song is a great little snapshot of, an early version of that song, but it's already so well progressed. So that means that they just wrote it like that, and it just came out, and it's so impressive. Then we've got Warning Sign, and the G is restored, no apostrophe, Warning Sign. It has a different intro, a really great drummy intro. It sounds cool. David puts on a little bit more of an affect on his vocal style in this one, more nasal, more like he's stepping into a character's shoes, which is interesting. And what does that say about him? We know that Chris wrote some of the lyrics for this song, so I don't know whether David just in his own mind was like, well, I want to get a bit of distance from that because I don't feel like these words are coming from me, they're coming from us. Having progressed from the Artistics demo onto this version, which is only a year and a bit later, the lyrics do change a little bit. So at this stage, the think fast, it's the truth has been simplified into the sort of more familiar, more repetitive, it's the truth, it's the truth. On this song in particular, it did strike me that, the demos do sound like a little thin, but I mean, I don't see it as necessarily a negative. Like, it is what you're listening to. I mean, some bands go for a sound like this, and it sounds like you're listening to like an early Violent Femmes record or something. It has a charm of its own, and I have no problem listening to this. I'm Not in Love, and we've kicked into 1976, and you can hear the improvement. You can hear how much tighter they are. You can hear how much further along they are with their progression. This song is a really driving song, and the way that other demos from the other period sort of lack that punch, this song has really got it. The stop-start section is really tight. They are really on it. On the final version that they record for the album, there's a little bit more air left between the last ringing chord on We Don't Need Love, and it's stretched out a little bit further. Here it comes in a little bit quicker, which is okay. There's crazy guitar precision on display here, and I know that that's something that David doesn't usually get credit for, but you can go and listen to this demo to see his skills, his chops. Sometimes he's just strumming away on a few chords and you think, well, this guy's not doing much. But then you listen to the songs like this and you go, whoa, this guy's got it. This guy's got those fingers. Then we get Thank You for Sending Me an Angel. Obviously, it doesn't end up on the first album. It kicks off the second album. Even on this demo version, though, you can hear how much it's there. It struck me listening to this version of this song that this is the first time that I heard the contribution that each band member as a creative individual was making to the collective. I think David really shines on his lyrics and vocals and guitar playing. I think Chris really shines with his drumming, and I think Tina really shines with her bass playing. But it really starts to show the potential of this band. And even though this song doesn't make it onto the first album, this is a song that I would point to, even in this early demo form, that says, hey, something special is going on here. Then we get the book I read. This is, again, this demo version is already a good version of the song. The song only gets strengthened after Jerry joins the band and adds his bits. Again, everyone's kind of finding their own way to make a big contribution to songs like this one. And again, this song is like a new one for David in that era. He'd just written it and it came out and it sounds so fully formed and just so great. Then we move on to I Wish You Wouldn't Say That. I had to check because the LP definitely says all tracks are not previously released. And so I was listening to this one going, but this sounds a lot like the version that was released as a bonus from the Sandy Vaseline era. But I remembered when we got to the end of this song that the version that came out in the early 90s has that sort of layered vocals at the end where David's going really manic and kind of screaming, I wish you wouldn't say that, all that kind of stuff. This version just repeats, I wish you wouldn't say that over and over again, and then it ends. I would say quite comfortably a different version. There's a few other little lyrical differences. Different lines are thrown in at slightly different points. So yes, a different version. Love Goes to Building on Fire. This is a really tight version of this song, even though it's a demo. 1976, the song's all there, and pretty soon after this, they release it as a single. So even though this is a bare bones arrangement of that song, those bones take on a very nice form. Happy Day is the last demo that we get. All of the sweetness from the album version is here on this version of this song. Even David's vocal on Happy Day is already here. So again, his chops as a performer, his chops as a songwriter, and his ability to just get a song out in a great form, first go, seemingly at will, is noticeable on a version like this. And then we've got Artists Only. This version is live at the Lower Manhattan Ocean Club from August 1976. Visually, I always remind myself of what the Ocean Club is because it looks like the stage is up against the wall. There's like a air conditioner or something up above the stage. It's a very plain white wall. I'll put a photo on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. That's the Ocean Club there. Don't know what I'm talking about? That's the Ocean Club right there. Just look at the screen. That's it. Now, there is only one live track on this collection. And some people online have been asking, like, isn't that a bit of an odd choice? Why would you have one live track? One thing I would say about that is that if this collection ended with Happy Day, that would be a weird way to finish the album. That would be a weird listening experience if you think of this as a whole release that needs to make sense and hang together unto itself. That would be a strange way to bookend this release. As I read before from David's book and as I've read online, people are saying, hey, these early demos just don't really capture the sort of power and drive that the band had as a live unit. So, I mean, I'm kind of glad that we get this little tease of one song. It's a good punchy finish to the album. It's enough of a tease to kind of leave us wanting more. Artists Only is also a song that they had early. It didn't make it onto the first album, came along on the second album when they had polished it up a bit more. There's also live versions of this song that sound pretty rough and are not polished. And then this version is a little bit more progressed. So I think it is interesting if we look through all of the live releases that we've had that have come out from all of these reissues from Rhino. Thank you, Jason Jones. It is interesting to listen to them all and put all of these kind of songs into a sequential order and see how they have all progressed. And what are you going to get if you listen to this version of the song? Well, I mean, there is a little bit of a jolt where the song seems to go straight into the verse where he comes in screaming, I don't have to prove I am creative, which I much prefer the original arrangement of the song where it's kind of just like a bit more of a gentle opening, and then this one really hits you with a punch in the second verse. But it is really good to see how the songs develop over time. So again, I'm not at all disappointed that it's there. I'd rather have it than not have it. The release would feel a little bit lighter and a little bit less satisfying without it. And it just makes you want to go and put on one of the live records that they've been releasing. So I'm really glad it's there. And it's a great strong ending. A little bit like they said with some of the recording spaces they were recording in that were sort of big and cavernous and empty. It does feel like it just needs a little bit of a sprinkling of connection to an audience. It does do something having a live song on the album, not only because it breathes a little bit of extra life into it, but it also finishes with applause, which is also how I felt listening to all this. I just wanted to applaud. So I think it's really nice to bring that little bit of life to the recording, and I think it serves this release really well. So that's it. What did you think? It's amazing that we're still getting new recordings resurfacing after all this time. More than 50 years for the Artistics release. And, I mean, people have pointed out, there's still a few live recordings of pretty special gems that haven't been released anywhere. There's still a few little nuggets that could come out over time. So even though I think these releases are really impressive and just bring us up to date and fill in so many gaps for us as diehard Talking Heads fans who listen to everything and just devour everything, as satisfying as these are, I think there's still room for a few extra little surprises before our time with this band is truly done. So that's it for me. That's my review of the Tentative Decisions release. Thank you so much for everybody who works so hard on bringing us all of this amazing material. Thank you so much for the band for agreeing to release all of this material too. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video and that I hope you enjoy the next one that I put out and the next one after that. And if you want to stay subscribed, that's even better. And you can always let me know if there's something specific that you want to see. But otherwise, until next time I see you, thanks for listening and watching. I've been Rod. Take it easy.